In almost every project, we should tell Git to ignore certain files and directories. For example, we don't want to include log files or binary files that get generated as a result of compiling our code. Adding these files is just going to increase the size of our repository without providing any values. Every developer can have their own log files, right? So log files are not something we want to share and synchronize with other team members. So for this demo, let's create a directory called logs and then add a log file here. Once again, we can use the echo command to write hello to logs/dev.log. Now let's run git status. So Git is saying that we have an untracked directory called logs, but we don't want to add this to the staging area because we don't want Git to track this. So to prevent this, we have to create a special file called .gitignore. So this file has no name, it only has an extension, and it should be in the root of your project. So let's echo logs/to.gitignore. Now I'm going to open this file using VS Code. So code gitignore. So in this file, we have a single entry, logs/, which indicates a directory. We can list as many files and directories we want here. For example, we can include main.log. We can also use patterns, like all log files and so on. Once we are done, we save the changes back in the terminal. Now, if you run git status one more time, Git no longer says that we have a new directory called logs because it's ignoring it. Instead, it says we have a new file called .gitignore. So let's add this file to the staging area and then commit our code. So add gitignore. So this is how we can ignore files and directories in Git. Just remember, this only works if you haven't already included a file or a directory in your repository. In other words, if you accidentally include a file in your repository and then later add it to gitignore, Git is not going to ignore that. Let me show you. So let's create a new directory called bin. Let's imagine that this directory contains our compiled source code. So using the echo command, I'm going to write hello to bin/app.bin. Now let's run git status. So we have a new directory. Now we want to accidentally commit this to our repository. So we add all the changes and then commit our code. Add bin. Here's the problem. Every time we compile our code, Git is going to say that this file, bin/app.bin, is changed, so we have to stage it and then commit it. It doesn't make sense. Why do we have to commit this file every time we compile our application? So back to gitignore, let's add the bin directory here as well. Now back in the terminal, let's run git status. So we have modified gitignore, beautiful. Let's stage and commit this change. So git add period, and then git commit include bin/ in gitignore. Now in this case, Git is not going to ignore the changes in this directory because it's already tracking this directory. So let's modify our bin file by saying echo hello world to bin/app.bin. Git status. Look, Git is saying that this file is modified. This is not what we want. To solve this problem, we have to remove this file from the staging area, which is what we're proposing for the next commit. So earlier we talked about git ls-files. This command shows the files in our staging area. So as you can see, this bin file or the bin directory is already in the staging area. We should remove it here. How? Well, earlier we talked about the git remove command. I told you that with this command, we can remove a file or a directory from both the working directory as well as the staging area. But in this case, we don't want to remove this file from our working directory because that's how we launch our application. So we want to remove this file only from the staging area. How? Well, let's add -h for a quick help. So we type git rm, then we can add 0 or more options. Now here we have this option called --cached. With this, we can remove stuff only from the index. Index is the old term for the staging area. So when you look at Git documentation, most of the time you see index. So using this option, we can remove the bin directory from the index. So git rm --cached bin /. Now we get an error saying not removing bin recursively without -r. So one more time, let's look at the help for this command. We have another option called -r for recursive removal. So we want to remove the entire bin directory from the staging area. To do that, we type git rm --cached -r bin /. Beautiful. Now this entire directory is removed from the staging area. Let's verify it. So git ls files. Our bin directory is no longer here. Now let's run git status. Look, we have one change that is ready to be committed. This directory is deleted from our staging area. So let's commit the change. Remove the bin directory that was accidentally committed. Okay. From this point forward, Git is no longer going to track the changes in this directory. So if we echo test to bin/app.bin, you can see our working directory is still clean. We don't have any changes. We can verify it using git status as well. So this is how we can ignore files and directories in Git. Now, if you head over to github.com/github/gitignore, you can see various gitignore templates for different programming languages. For example, let's look at the template for Java. So for Java projects, it's a great idea to exclude all the class files because these files get automatically generated when you compile your code. So there's no need to include them in your repository. So here we have various patterns like all the class files or all the log files. The lines that start with a hash sign, these are comments, so they get ignored by Git.